In the vast expanse of the galaxy, where ancient civilizations had ruled for millennia, humanity was considered nothing more than a cosmic joke. The Galactic Council's chambers echoed with laughter whenever Earth's name was mentioned. Primitive apes playing with fire, they called us. Barbaric creatures who hadn't even mastered basic energy manipulation. The Zelkari Empire, with their crystalline cities that floated among the stars, sneered at human technology. The Vorthak Confederation, masters of biological warfare who could reshape entire ecosystems with a thought, dismissed human military might as children playing war games with sticks and stones. For decades, humanity endured the mockery. We were the newest members of the galactic community, barely tolerated, constantly reminded of our place at the bottom of the cosmic food chain. Our requests for trade partnerships were met with condescending smiles. Our offers of alliance were politely declined with thinly veiled disgust. But the galaxy's elder races had made one critical error in their assessment of humanity. They had mistaken our restraint for weakness, our diplomacy for cowardice, and our patience for submission. They had never bothered to study our history, to understand what made humans truly dangerous. They had never learned about the soldiers who held the line at Thermopylae, the warriors who stormed the beaches of Normandy, or the fighters who never surrendered even when all hope seemed lost. They didn't know that behind every human diplomat sat a species forged in the fires of endless conflict, tempered by centuries of warfare, and refined by the understanding that sometimes violence was the only language others would understand. The mockery was about to end, and the galaxy was about to learn why humanity had survived when so many other species had fallen to extinction. They were about to discover what happened when you pushed a species of apex predators too far. The lesson would be written in plasma fire across the stars themselves. Admiral Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of the human embassy station, watching the massive ships of the Galactic Council float past like metallic whales in the cosmic ocean. Each vessel represented a civilization that had mastered faster-than-light travel before humanity had even discovered agriculture. The Zelkari dreadnoughts gleamed like captured stars, their crystalline hulls refracting light in patterns that hurt human eyes to look at directly. The Vorthak bioships pulsed with organic rhythms, their living hulls breathing in the vacuum of space as if it were air. And then there were the human ships, grey, angular, functional. No artistic flourishes, no display of technological superiority, just efficient killing machines that looked exactly like what they were. The other species found them aesthetically offensive, calling them crude metal boxes in their diplomatic communications. Chen had served in the Human Defense Force for 37 years, rising through the ranks during the species' rapid expansion into space. She had fought pirates in the Outer Rim, defended colony worlds from hostile wildlife, and led peacekeeping missions on a dozen different planets. But nothing in her experience had prepared her for the sheer arrogance of the galactic community. The communication terminal behind her chimed with an incoming message. Chen turned to see the holographic image of Ambassador Williams materializing above the projector. His usually calm demeanor was strained, deep lines etched around his eyes from months of fruitless negotiations. "Admiral, we've received the Council's response to our latest proposal," Williams said, his voice carefully controlled. "They're less than enthusiastic." Chen nodded grimly. She had expected as much. For the past 6 months, humanity had been attempting to establish formal trade agreements with the major galactic powers. Earth needed rare minerals for its expanding fleet, and human agricultural techniques could revolutionize food production on resource-poor worlds. It should have been a mutually beneficial arrangement. Instead, every proposal had been met with barely concealed contempt. "Let me guess," Chen said. "The Zelkari think our technology is too primitive to be worth their time, and the Vorthak are concerned about biological contamination from our presence." William's laugh was bitter. Close. The Zelkari representative actually used the phrase Stone Age metallurgy when describing our ship construction. Apparently, they find the concept of welding metal plates together to be quaintly barbaric. Chen felt her jaw clench. She had seen Zelkari ships in action during joint exercises, and while they were undeniably beautiful, they were also fragile. Their crystalline hulls could channel enormous amounts of energy, but a single crack could cause catastrophic failure. Human ships might be ugly, but they could take punishment that would shatter a Zelkari vessel into sparkling dust.
"And the Vorthak?" Chen asked.
Ambassador Kethmalar suggested that humans might be better suited to manual labor positions within their territory.
He seemed to think he was being generous by offering us jobs as servants. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Chen's hands clenched into fists at her sides, knuckles white with suppressed rage. In the old days, before humanity had joined the galactic community, such an insult would have been answered with plasma cannons. But they were civilized now. They followed diplomatic protocols and attempted to resolve disputes through negotiation. Sometimes Chen wondered if civilization was overrated. There's more, Williams continued. The hegemony of San has officially requested that human ships be restricted to designated shipping lanes. They claim our unpredictable navigation patterns pose a safety hazard to other vessels. Chen laughed, but there was no humor in it. Human pilots were among the best in the galaxy, capable of flying through asteroid fields and navigating unstable wormholes with casual ease. The real reason for the restriction was simple. The other species were afraid that humans might see too much of their territory, might learn things they weren't supposed to know. How much longer are we supposed to endure this? Chen asked. Williams was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. The Secretary General has instructed me to maintain diplomatic relations at all costs. He believes that eventually the other species will come to respect us. Respect? Chen's voice rose dangerously. They don't want respect, Ambassador. They want submission. They want us to accept our place as the galaxy's newest servant species and be grateful for the privilege.
I know, Williams said.
But what's the alternative? We're outnumbered 1,000 to 1. Even with our military advantages, we can't fight the entire galaxy. Chen turned back to the observation window, watching a squadron of Regalian interceptors perform what they probably thought was an impressive aerobatic display. The ships moved in perfect formation, their movements synchronized to the millisecond. It was beautiful, precise, and completely predictable. Human pilots would have scattered at the first sign of enemy contact, using terrain and unpredictable movement patterns to confuse their opponents. The Regalians flew like they were participating in a parade, not preparing for war. Maybe we can't fight the entire galaxy, Chen said quietly. But we don't have to. We just need to make them understand that we're not the helpless primitives they think we are. Williams frowned. Admiral, I hope you're not suggesting...
I'm not suggesting anything,
Chen interrupted. I'm just observing that respect is something you earn, not something you're given. And sometimes, earning it requires a demonstration of capability. The communication ended, leaving Chen alone with her thoughts. Outside the window, the parade of alien ships continued, each one representing a civilization that had never known true hardship, had never been forced to fight for survival against impossible odds. They had grown soft in their technological superiority, comfortable in their assumption that might made right. They had forgotten that evolution was a brutal process, and that the species that survived were not always the strongest or the smartest. Sometimes, they were simply the most determined to keep fighting when everyone else had given up. Chen's personal communicator buzzed with an encrypted message from Earth. She read it twice, her expression growing grimmer with each word. The High Command was losing patience with diplomatic solutions. Plans were being made, contingencies prepared. If the galactic community continued to treat humanity as a second-class species, there would be consequences. The message ended with a simple phrase that made Chen's blood run cold. Operation Retaliation is authorized for immediate implementation. She deleted the message and returned to her quarters, mind racing with possibilities. The galaxy thought humanity was weak, thought they could push Earth's children around with impunity. They were about to learn how wrong they were. In the depths of human space, veteran soldiers who had fought in 100 battles were receiving new orders. Weapons that had been held in reserve were being loaded onto ships. Plans that had been theoretical exercises were becoming operational realities. The mockery was about to end, and the galaxy was about to receive a lesson in why it was never wise to underestimate a species that had clawed its way up from the bottom of the evolutionary ladder through sheer bloody-minded determination. The other species measured strength by the sophistication of their technology. Humans measured it by their willingness to use whatever tools they had available to achieve victory, no matter the cost. That difference was about to become very important indeed. Colonel Marcus Irondob Rodriguez had been enjoying his retirement on the agricultural world of New Sonora when the encrypted communication arrived. He was sitting on his porch watching the twin suns set over fields of Earth-imported corn when his military-grade communicator crackled to life for the first time in 5 years. The message was brief and coded, but Rodriguez understood it immediately. After 3 decades of military service, including campaigns against the Centauri Raiders and the brutal suppression of the New Shanghai Rebellion, He could read between the lines of military speak better than most people could read their native language. Voluntary recall to active duty. Priority Alpha clearance required. Report to staging area, Whiskey 7, within 72 hours. Rodriguez set down his glass of synthetic whiskey and allowed himself a moment to process the implications. Voluntary recall meant they weren't drafting him back into service. They were asking. Priority Alpha meant whatever was happening was classified at the highest levels, and Whiskey 7 was a designation he recognized from his days in Special Operations Command. It was a black site facility hidden in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, officially designated as a deep space communications relay. Unofficially, it was where the Human Defense Force stored the weapons and personnel it hoped never to need. Rodriguez stood up slowly, his cybernetic knee joint whirring softly as it compensated for old battle damage. He was 58 years old, had earned his retirement through blood and sacrifice, and should have told whoever sent that message to find someone younger and more eager to answer the call. Instead, he found himself packing his old combat gear. The transport that picked him up was a sleek military courier, the kind used for missions that officially didn't exist. The pilot was a young lieutenant who treated Rodriguez with the kind of awed respect reserved for living legends. Rodriguez had to suppress a bitter laugh at that. Legends were what they made of dead heroes. Living veterans were just reminders of unpleasant necessities. The flight to Whiskey 7 took 18 hours, plenty of time for Rodriguez to wonder what could possibly require the recall of retired Special Forces personnel. The galaxy had been at peace for decades. Sure, there were pirates and the occasional territorial dispute, but nothing that required the kind of soldiers who fought in the shadows and left no witnesses. His questions were answered the moment he docked at the facility. The hangar bay was filled with familiar faces, men and women he had served with across a dozen different conflicts. There was Captain Elena Vasquez, who had earned 3 Purple Hearts during the siege of Kepler Station. Sergeant Major Tommy Chen, Admiral Chen's younger brother, who could disable a ship's computer systems with nothing but a portable datapad and 15 minutes of uninterrupted work. Commander Jackson Webb, the most decorated naval officer in human history, who had single-handedly held off an entire pirate fleet long enough for civilian transports to escape. These weren't just veterans, they were the best of the best, the soldiers who had earned their reputations in the fires of actual combat. Looking around the hangar, Rodriguez counted nearly 200 personnel. Whatever was happening, it was big enough to require an army of specialists. Ladies and gentlemen, a familiar voice called out, cutting through the murmur of conversation. Rodriguez turned to see General Patricia Hayes striding into the hangar, her uniform bearing the insignia of Supreme Military Command. Hayes had been a colonel when Rodriguez last served under her command, leading the assault on the Retaliation smuggling operation at the edge of known space. I know you all have questions, Hayes continued, her voice carrying easily across the vast space. You've earned your retirement, earned the right to live in peace, and we have no business calling you back to service. But circumstances have forced our hand. She activated a holographic projector, filling the air above their heads with images of alien ships and diplomatic documents. For the past year, humanity has attempted to establish normal relations with the galactic community. We have offered trade partnerships, shared our technological innovations, and sought to contribute to galactic peace and prosperity. The images shifted to show recordings of various alien diplomats, their expressions ranging from condescending to openly hostile. The response has been less than encouraging. We have been mocked, dismissed, and actively excluded from meaningful participation in galactic affairs. Our ships are restricted to specific flight paths, like weird dangerous animals that need to be contained. Our diplomats are treated as supplicants begging for scraps. Rodriguez felt his old anger stirring, the cold fury that had made him so effective in combat. He could see the same emotion reflected in the faces around him. These were not people who accepted insults gracefully. 3 days ago, Hayes continued, the situation escalated. The Vorthak Confederation seized a human merchant vessel in neutral space, claiming it had violated their territorial boundaries. The crew was imprisoned, the cargo confiscated, and our diplomatic protests were ignored. The hologram shifted to show the merchant vessel, a small freighter called the New Horizons. Rodriguez recognized the design, a civilian transport, lightly armed and completely incapable of threatening anyone. The kind of ship that hauled supplies to frontier colonies and asked nothing more than safe passage through space. The Vorthak ambassador informed our diplomatic corps that the crew would be held indefinitely as a demonstration of the consequences of human arrogance. They are, in essence, hostages being held to send a message to Earth about our proper place in the galactic hierarchy. The temperature in the hangar seemed to drop several degrees. These were professional soldiers, people who understood the rules of warfare and engagement. Taking civilian hostages was a line that civilized species didn't cross, a violation of every treaty and convention that governed interactions between spacefaring races. Official channels have failed, Hayes said, her voice taking on the flat, emotionless tone that all of them recognized. It was the voice of a commander preparing to unleash violence. Diplomatic protests have been ignored. Economic sanctions are meaningless against a species that doesn't trade with us anyway. The Secretary General has authorized military action to recover our people. Rodriguez felt a familiar tightness in his chest, the mix of anticipation and dread that always preceded a combat mission. Around him, other veterans were shifting unconsciously into more alert postures, old reflexes awakening after years of dormancy. This is not a war, Hayes clarified. This is a rescue operation. But it's a rescue operation that requires sending a very clear message to the galaxy about the consequences of threatening human civilians. We need to demonstrate that we are not the helpless primitives they think we are. She paused, looking around the hangar at the assembled veterans. Every one of you volunteered for recall, which tells me that you understand what's at stake. Your mission will be to infiltrate Vortax space, recover the hostages, and ensure that the galaxy understands the price of underestimating humanity. Commander Webb raised his hand. Rules of engagement, General? Hayes' smile was colder than vacuum. Minimize collateral damage to civilian populations. Beyond that, you have discretionary authority to use whatever force is necessary to complete the mission and ensure the safe return of human personnel. The hangar fell silent as the implications sank in. Discretionary authority was military code for do whatever it takes. It was authorization for the kind of actions that would normally require approval from the highest levels of government, permission to operate without the usual restrictions that govern military behavior. Questions? Hayes asked. Sergeant Major Chen stepped forward. Timeline, General. 48 hours to complete mission planning and equipment selection. 72 hours to insertion point. The hostages have been held for 3 days already. Any longer, and there may not be anyone left to rescue. Rodriguez felt his blood run cold. The Vorthak were known for their biological expertise, their ability to modify living creatures for their own purposes. If they decided to experiment on human prisoners. What about political oversight? Captain Vasquez asked. There won't be any, Hayes replied bluntly. This operation is classified at the highest levels. As far as the galaxy is concerned, you don't exist. If something goes wrong, if you're captured or killed, the official position will be that you are acting as rogue elements without government authorization. It was a familiar arrangement, the kind of plausible deniability that allowed governments to disavow actions that might prove politically inconvenient. Rodriguez had operated under similar conditions before, knowing that success meant glory for his superiors, while failure meant he would be abandoned to whatever fate awaited him. One more thing, Hayes said. Intelligence indicates that several other species are watching this situation carefully. If we fail to respond effectively, it will be taken as confirmation that humanity can be pushed around with impunity. If we succeed, well, it may change the entire dynamic of our relationship with the galactic community. She deactivated the hologram and fixed them all with her steely gaze. You have 2 hours to decide whether you want to participate. Anyone who chooses to withdraw will be returned to their previous location with full honor and no questions asked. For those who stay, welcome back to active duty. Rodriguez didn't need 2 hours to make his decision. He had made it the moment he learned that civilians were being held hostage by alien bullies who thought humanity was too weak to respond. Around him, he could see similar determination in the faces of his fellow veterans. They were older now, perhaps not as fast as they had been in their prime, but they were also more experienced, more cunning, and infinitely more dangerous than the young soldiers they had once been. The galaxy was about to learn why human veterans were treated with such respect by their own people. The mockery was about to end, and it was going to end in fire and blood. The briefing room aboard the stealth vessel Phantom Strike was cramped, designed for efficiency rather than comfort. Rodriguez sat at the central table with 11 other specially selected veterans, each one representing a different aspect of human military expertise. The ship itself was a marvel of human engineering. Officially, it didn't exist. Unofficially, it was one of 3 experimental vessels designed for operations that required absolute secrecy. Rodriguez studied the faces around the table, mentally cataloging their specialties. Elena Vasquez had transitioned from infantry to intelligence work, becoming an expert in alien psychology and tactical assessment. Tommy Chen remained the best electronic warfare specialist in the human fleet, capable of infiltrating and subverting computer systems that other species considered impregnable. Jackson Webb commanded the vessel, his expertise in unconventional naval tactics making him the perfect choice for a mission that required both stealth and precision. But it was the newest addition to their team that drew Rodriguez's attention. Dr. Sarah Kim had never served in the military, but her expertise in xenobiology was unmatched. She was the only human who had successfully reverse-engineered Vorthak biotechnology, and her presence suggested that this mission would require more than conventional military solutions. "Ladies and gentlemen," Commander Webb began, activating the holographic display that dominated one wall of the briefing room. "Welcome to Operation Hammerdrop. Our objective is simple. Extract 12 human hostages from a Vorthak detention facility and deliver a message that humanity will not tolerate threats against our civilians." The hologram showed a three-dimensional model of the Vorthak prison complex, a sprawling organic structure that looked more like a tumor than a building. It pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, its living walls breathing in rhythm with some alien heartbeat. "The facility is located on Kepler 442b, a world on the edge of Vorthak space," Webb continued. "Intelligence indicates that our people are being held in the central biocontainment unit here." A section of the structure glowed red on the display. "The problem is getting to them." Dr. Kim leaned forward, her expression grim. "The entire facility is a living organism, Commander. The Vorthak don't build prisons, they grow them. The walls can detect intruders at a cellular level. The air itself is saturated with defense pheromones, and the internal layout changes based on perceived threats. So we can't just blast our way in," Sergeant Major Chen observed. "What about electronic warfare? Can we hack their systems?" "The Vorthak don't use electronic systems the way we understand them," Kim replied. "Their technology is bioneural, based on modified organic computers. I can interface with their systems, but it requires direct physical contact and specialized equipment." Rodriguez spoke up for the first time. "What kind of defenses are we looking at?" Webb manipulated the hologram, showing the orbital space around the planet. 3 defense platforms, each one capable of engaging multiple targets simultaneously. A patrol squadron of 12 bioships, and approximately 200 Vorthak warriors stationed at the facility itself. "And they don't know we're coming?" Captain Vasquez asked. "As far as the Vorthak are concerned, humans don't have the capability for this kind of operation," Webb replied. "Their intelligence assessment describes our technology as primitive and our military doctrine as predictably straightforward. They're expecting a frontal assault with conventional weapons, if they're expecting anything at all." Rodriguez smiled grimly. The Vorthak weren't entirely wrong about human military doctrine being straightforward. When faced with an enemy, the standard human response was to identify their weaknesses and then hit them as hard as possible until they stopped moving. But what the aliens failed to understand was that human simplicity was deceptive. Sometimes the most effective strategy was also the most direct one. "So, how do we play this?" Rodriguez asked. Webb's grin was predatory. "We give them exactly what they expect. A straightforward human assault. Just not the kind they're prepared for." The hologram shifted to show the approach vector. Phase 1, Stealth Insertion. The Phantom Strike will deploy a reconnaissance team to gather real-time intelligence and identify the exact location of our people. Phase 2, Diversionary Assault. A small team will hit the orbital defenses with everything we've got, making as much noise as possible. Phase 3, Infiltration. While the Vorthak are responding to the orbital attack, our main team will penetrate the facility and extract the hostages. "And Phase 4? Tommy Chen asked. "Phase 4 is where we send our message to the galaxy," Webb replied. "We make sure the Vorthak understand the price of threatening human civilians, and we do it in a way that ensures every other species gets the same message."
Doctor...
Kim looked uncomfortable. "Commander, I need to stress that Vorthak biotechnology can be extremely dangerous. If they've been experimenting on our people, then we make sure they never get the chance to do it again." Rodriguez interrupted, his voice carrying the cold fury that had made him legendary among his peers. "What do we know about the hostages' condition?" Kim consulted her datapad. "Long-range bioscans indicate they're still alive, but there are signs of modification. The Vorthak may have been using them for biological research." The temperature in the room seemed to drop by several degrees. Every veteran present understood the implications. If the aliens had been conducting medical experiments on human prisoners, this mission had just shifted from rescue to vengeance. "Equipment loadout?" Vasquez asked, her voice carefully controlled. Webb activated another section of the hologram, showing an array of weapons and gear that most of them had never seen before. Experimental plasma rifles designed specifically for use against bioarmor. Nano-explosive charges that can disrupt organic computer systems. Environmental suits with integrated life support and stealth capabilities. Rodriguez examined the weapon specifications with professional interest. The plasma rifles were significantly more powerful than standard military issue, designed to punch through the thick organic armor that Vorthak warriors used instead of conventional protection. The nano-explosives were particularly interesting. They could be programmed to target specific organic compounds, effectively turning the prison's own living structure against its defenders. "What about extraction?" Chen asked. "How do we get out once we have the hostages?" "That's where things get interesting," Webb replied. "We're not running. Once we have our people, we're going to make sure the Vorthak remember this day for the rest of their very short collective lifespan." He manipulated the hologram again, showing the planet's orbital mechanics. "Kepler, 442b has an unstable moon that's been gradually decaying for the past millennium. Our scientists have calculated that a properly placed explosive charge could accelerate that decay process significantly." Rodriguez felt his eyebrows rise. "Dimir, you're talking about dropping a moon on them." "Not the entire moon," Webb clarified. "Just enough debris to ensure that the prison facility and everything in the surrounding area becomes a very large crater. The Vorthak will survive. Most of their population centers are on the other side of the planet, but they'll understand that we could have wiped them out completely if we had chosen to do so." Dr. Kim looked horrified. "Commander, that kind of orbital bombardment could destabilize the entire planetary ecosystem. The environmental damage would be catastrophic. The environmental damage from leaving Vorthak biotechnology intact would be worse," Rodriguez said quietly. "These people have been experimenting on human prisoners. That's not something we can allow to continue." Webb nodded grimly. "Intelligence indicates that the Vorthak have been developing biological weapons based on human DNA. If they succeed in weaponizing those compounds, they could deploy them against our colony worlds. We can't let that technology survive." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. This wasn't just a rescue mission anymore. It was a preemptive strike against a potential existential threat to humanity. The Vorthak had crossed a line that civilized species didn't cross, and now they were going to learn why that line existed. "Timeline?" Vasquez asked. 18 hours to target, Webb replied. "We'll drop out of hyperspace at maximum sensor range and conduct final reconnaissance. If everything looks good, we execute the mission plan immediately. If not, we adapt and overcome." Rodriguez felt the familiar pre-mission tension building in his chest. It was a mixture of anticipation, fear, and cold professional focus that every veteran knew intimately. In 18 hours, they would either complete one of the most audacious rescue operations in human history, or they would die trying. Either way, the galaxy was about to learn that humanity was not the helpless species they thought they were dealing with. "One last thing," Webb said, his voice taking on a formal tone. "Each of you has the right to withdraw from this mission, no questions asked. What we're about to do will change the political landscape of the entire galaxy. There will be consequences. And some of those consequences may be unpleasant for the people involved." He looked around the table, meeting each person's eyes in turn. "But if we do nothing, if we allow the Vorthak to hold our people as hostages and experiment on them for their own purposes, then we accept our place as the galaxy's newest servant species. And I, for one, would rather die fighting than live on my knees." Rodriguez nodded slowly. Around the table, he could see the same determination reflected in every face. These were people who had spent their entire adult lives defending humanity's interests, often at great personal cost. They weren't about to stop now. "All right then," Webb said. "Let's go remind the galaxy why humans are called the apex predators of Earth." The Phantom Strike materialized from hyperspace like a ghost becoming solid, its stealth systems already engaged before the quantum foam had fully settled. Commander Webb stood on the bridge, watching the tactical display as it populated with contact markers. 3 orbital defense platforms, exactly as intelligence had predicted. 12 bioships patrolling in a standard defensive pattern. And below them, the living nightmare that was the Vorthak prison complex. "Passive sensors only," Webb ordered quietly. "I want to know everything about their deployment before they know we're here." Lieutenant Martinez, the ship's sensor officer, bent over her console with professional concentration. "Orbital platforms are running standard patrol sweeps, Commander. Bioships are maintaining a high orbit approximately 30,000 kilometers out. No sign they've detected us." Webb nodded grimly. The Vorthak were confident in their superiority. Probably assuming that no human vessel could penetrate this far into their territory without being detected, they were about to learn the difference between confidence and competence. Signal from the reconnaissance team. Communications Officer Park reported. They've reached the surface and are moving into position. Below them on the planet's surface, Rodriguez led a 4-person team through the alien jungle that surrounded the prison complex. The vegetation was wrong in ways that made human eyes hurt to look at it directly. Trees that pulsed with their own heartbeat. Flowers that tracked movement like predatory animals. Grass that writhed underfoot with disturbing awareness. Bio readings are off the charts, Dr. P. Kim whispered into her communicator. The entire ecosystem has been modified. Every plant, every microorganism, everything is part of the prison's sensory network. Rodriguez felt his skin crawl as they moved through the nightmare landscape. The Vorthak didn't just build prisons. They created entire environments designed to detect and contain their enemies. The very air they breathed was analyzing their DNA, comparing it to genetic databases, preparing to sound alarms the moment it identified them as intruders. How long do we have? Rodriguez asked quietly. Maybe 20 minutes before the environmental sensors finish their analysis, Kim replied. The organic computers are incredibly sophisticated, but they're also slow by electronic standards. They need time to process the complexity of human DNA. Sergeant Major Chen was already at work. His portable electronic suite interfaced with what looked like a tree but was actually a bioneural processing node. I'm in their local network, he reported. Uploading the virus package now. The virus wasn't electronic, it was biological, a carefully crafted piece of genetic code that would disrupt the prison's organic computer systems without triggering their immune responses. Dr. Kim had spent months developing it, working from stolen samples of Vorthak biotechnology. Virus uploaded, Chen confirmed. Dormancy period is 30 minutes, then it activates and starts spreading through their network. Rodriguez keyed his communicator. Phantom strike. This is ground team. Package delivered. Beginning final approach to target. Above them in orbit, Webb received the signal and felt a cold smile spread across his face. Acknowledged, ground team. Initiating phase 2. All hands, this is the captain. We are now weapons free. Target the orbital platforms and make some noise. The Phantom Strike's stealth field collapsed as its weapon systems came online, revealing the sleek predator to the Vorthak sensors. For a moment, there was only silence on the Vorthak communication channels, as their computers tried to process what they were seeing. A human vessel, alone, in the heart of their territory, with weapon systems that registered as significantly more powerful than anything in their intelligence files. Then the silence erupted into panicked alien chatter as the Vorthak realized they were under attack. The first orbital platform died before it could even target the human ship. Plasma torpedoes designed for ship-to-ship combat punched through its bioarmor like bullets through paper, causing catastrophic system failures that rippled through its organic hull. The platform's death screams could be heard across every Vorthak communication channel, a sound like a whale being butchered alive. The second platform managed to return fire, launching a salvo of biomissiles that tracked their targets through genetic markers rather than electronic signatures. Webb smiled grimly as he watched them approach. Point defense, engage. Show them what real targeting systems look like. The Phantom Strike's laser grid came alive, each beam precisely calculated to intercept and destroy the incoming missiles. Where Vorthak biomissiles relied on living guidance systems that could be confused or misdirected, human targeting computers simply calculated trajectories and eliminated threats with mathematical precision. The bioships were scrambling now, their organic hulls glowing with combat biorhythms as they maneuvered to engage. But they moved like living creatures, following instinctual patterns that could be predicted and exploited. The Phantom Strike moved like a machine, every maneuver calculated for maximum tactical advantage. Third platform is charging some kind of energy weapon, Martinez reported. Power readings are off the scale. Let them charge, Webb replied calmly. Vasquez, are you in position? On the planet's surface, Captain Vasquez crouched behind what had once been a boulder, but was now clearly some kind of sensory organ, its surface covered with nerve endings that twitched and writhed as they detected her presence. She had worked her way to within 500 meters of the prison complex, close enough to see the guards moving along its living walls. Confirmed, Commander. I have eyes on the target. Counting approximately 50 Vorthak warriors in defensive positions around the main structure. Copy that. Stand by for the fireworks. The third orbital platform finally completed its charge cycle, unleashing a beam of coherent energy that could have vaporized a conventional human vessel. But the Phantom Strike wasn't conventional. Its experimental deflector array absorbed the beam's energy and channeled it directly into the ship's own weapon systems, turning the Vorthak's attack into ammunition for their own destruction. The return fire lit up the night side of the planet like a miniature star going nova. The third platform simply ceased to exist, its organic structure unable to withstand the focused fury of its own reflected attack. Platform 3 destroyed, Martinez confirmed. Bioships are moving to intercept. Let them come, Webb said. All hands, prepare for close engagement. Time to show these aliens what human engineering can accomplish. The Vorthak bioships attacked in a coordinated swarm, their living hulls flowing and shifting as they adapted to combat conditions. They were beautiful in a horrible way, like deep-sea creatures given the ability to swim between the stars. Their weapons were part of their biology energy cannons, that were actually specialized organs, missile launchers that were modified reproductive systems. But beauty didn't stop bullets. An adaptation was useless against enemies who could think faster than biological processes could respond. The Phantom Strike tore through the center of their formation like a shark among schoolfish. Its plasma cannons found weak points in bioarmor that the aliens didn't even know they had. Its missile systems locked onto biosignatures and delivered warheads that disrupted organic computer networks on a molecular level. Within minutes, 8 of the 12 bioships were either destroyed or crippled beyond repair. The survivors fled back toward the planet, broadcasting desperate distress calls that would bring reinforcements. Eventually. "Surface team, this is Phantom Strike," Webb announced. "Your distraction is ready. The locals are going to be very unhappy for the next few minutes." Rodriguez grinned as he watched Vorthak warriors streaming out of the prison complex, responding to the orbital battle taking place above their heads. "Copy that, Phantom Strike. Beginning infiltration now." The virus that Chen had uploaded was beginning to take effect, causing subtle failures in the prison's sensory network. Guard posts that should have been watching specific approaches were receiving false reports about intruders in other areas. Bioscanners that should have detected human DNA signatures were instead registering phantom contacts that sent Vorthak security forces running in the wrong directions. Rodriguez and his team moved through the chaos like ghosts, their environmental suits masking their heat signatures and biotraces. The prison complex loomed ahead of them, its organic walls pulsing with distressed rhythms as its computer systems struggled to process conflicting information. "Dr. Kim, we need that door open," Rodriguez whispered as they reached what appeared to be a solid wall but was actually a sophisticated biomechanical barrier. Kim pressed her hands against the living surface, her modified gloves interfacing directly with the alien technology. "I'm in," she reported after a few tense seconds. "The biological locks are more complex than I expected, but the viruses weaken their responses." "Give me 30 seconds. Rodriguez watched the alien guards through his scope, counting targets and calculating firing solutions. 30 seconds was a lifetime in combat, especially when they were surrounded by enemies who could detect their presence the moment the virus stopped masking their signatures. "Got it," Kim whispered. The wall dilated open like an iris, revealing a tunnel that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. Bioscanners are offline for approximately 10 minutes. After that, the immune system will adapt to the virus. Rodriguez keyed his communicator one last time. "Phantom Strike, we're going in. If you don't hear from us in 20 minutes, complete the mission." Webb's voice was grim. "Understood, ground team. Give them hell." Rodriguez stepped through the iris and into the alien nightmare that waited beyond. Behind him, his team followed without hesitation, professional soldiers walking into the unknown because that was what the mission required. The galaxy was about to learn that humans didn't just fight with technology and tactics, they fought with something that no amount of biological modification could replicate: the absolute refusal to abandon their own people, no matter the cost. The interior of the Vortak prison was a nightmare made flesh. Corridors that breathed, walls that watched, floors that yielded underfoot like diseased skin. Rodriguez led his team through the organic maze, following Dr. Kim's navigation as she interfaced with the alien biocomputer systems that controlled the facility's layout. "Bio readings indicate the hostages are being held in the central processing chamber," Kim whispered, her face pale as she interpreted the data flowing through her neural interface. "But Marcus, the readings are wrong. They're showing modifications that shouldn't be possible." Rodriguez felt ice form in his veins. "What kind of modifications?" "Genetic alterations. Neural implants." "They've been..." Kim's voice broke. "They've been experimenting on them, trying to understand human biology by dissecting it piece by piece." Behind them, Sergeant Major Chen's jaw clenched so tightly that his teeth creaked. Captain Vasquez made a sound deep in her throat that was more growl than human speech. These were professional soldiers who had seen the worst the war could offer. But the cold-blooded torture of civilians crossed lines that even hardened veterans couldn't ignore. "How much further?" Rodriguez asked, his voice deadly calm. 50 meters, Kim replied. "But Marcus, the chamber is heavily guarded. Bioscanners show at least 20 Vorthak warriors, plus automated defense systems." Rodriguez nodded grimly. 20-4 odds under normal circumstances would be challenging, but manageable. 20-4 odds inside an alien facility that could reshape itself to assist its defenders was considerably worse. But they had advantages that the Vorthak didn't know about, weapons designed specifically for this kind of encounter. "Chen, how long until their immune systems adapt to the virus?" 3 minutes, maybe 4, Chen replied, checking his readings. "The organic computers are already starting to root around the corrupted sections." "Then we do this fast and loud," Rodriguez decided. "Kim, can you open the chamber door?"
Yes, but the moment I do, every alarm in the facility will activate.
"They'll know exactly where we are." "Good," Rodriguez said, checking his plasma rifle's power settings. "I want them to know where we are. Vasquez, you and Chen take the left side. Kim stays with me on the right. We go in shooting, secure the hostages, and get out." Questions? There were none. These were veterans who had done this kind of work before. Professionals who understood that sometimes the only way through hell was to keep walking. Kim pressed her hand against what looked like solid wall, and the biomechanical barrier dilated open to reveal a chamber that would haunt Rodriguez's dreams for the rest of his life. The human hostages were suspended in organic pods, their bodies connected to tubes and wires that pulsed with alien fluids. Some were conscious, their eyes wide with pain and terror. Others floated in induced comas while Vorthak technicians monitored their vital signs and recorded data about human physiology. But worst of all were the modifications. Cybernetic implants that had been grafted onto living tissue. Genetic alterations that had changed bone structure and organ function. One of the hostages had been given additional arms, crude biological augmentations that leaked fluid and showed signs of rejection. "Jesus Christ," Vasquez whispered. Rodriguez felt something cold and terrible settle in his chest, a fury so pure it transcended mere anger. These weren't enemy soldiers who had been captured in battle. These were merchants and traders, civilians who had been going about their peaceful business when they were seized and subjected to this horror. The Vorthak guards finally noticed the open door, their insectoid faces turning toward the human intruders with expressions of surprise. For a moment, the chamber was silent, except for the wet sounds of the biomachinery and the labored breathing of the human prisoners. Then Rodriguez opened fire. The experimental plasma rifle discharged with a sound like thunder, its beam punching through Vorthak bio-armor and reducing the first guard to superheated vapor. The alien's death scream echoed through the chamber, triggering a cascade of alarms that made the organic walls convulse with distress. Vasquez and Chen flanked left, their weapons carving through the Vorthak defenders with professional precision. The aliens were tough, their organic armor capable of absorbing tremendous punishment. But human weapons had been specifically designed to overcome their biological advantages. "Kim, get those people out of those pods," Rodriguez shouted over the sound of weapons fire. Dr. Kim rushed to the nearest suspension pod, her modified gloves interfacing directly with the alien biomachinery. "The extraction process will take time," she called back. "The organic systems are integrated with their nervous systems. If I rush it, I could kill them." A Vorthak warrior charged Rodriguez with what looked like a living weapon. Some kind of organic spear that writhed and twisted as it sought human flesh. Rodriguez put 3 plasma bolts center mass, watching the alien's bioarmor bubble and melt under the assault. The creature collapsed, its weapon dissolving into acidic sludge. "How much time?" Rodriguez demanded. 2 minutes per person minimum, Kim replied, working frantically at the alien controls. 12 hostages means 24 minutes. Rodriguez checked his tactical display. The virus was failing, the prison's immune systems adapting faster than projected. In 24 minutes, they would be facing the entire facility's security force with no element of surprise. "Chen, how are we doing on the exterior?" "Perimeter teams are engaging," Chen reported, his rifle chattering as he suppressed a group of Vorthak reinforcements. "But they're bringing up heavy bioweapons. We've got maybe 10 minutes before this position becomes untenable." Rodriguez made a command decision. "Kim, prioritize the worst cases. Get the people who won't survive transport out first. Everyone else comes with us as they are. Marcus, some of these modifications. If I don't reverse them, they'll die within hours. And if we don't get them out of here, they'll die within minutes, Rodriguez replied. Do what you can. Above them, the Phantom Strike was engaged in a running battle with Vorthak reinforcements that had arrived from the outer system. Commander Webb watched the tactical display as more bioships dropped out of hyperspace, their organic hulls glowing with combat biorhythms. Sir, we're outnumbered 15-1, Lieutenant Martinez reported, and they're deploying some kind of bioweapon. Energy readings are unlike anything in our databases. Webb studied the approaching formation and felt his blood run cold. The lead bioship was massive, easily 3 times the size of any vessel they had encountered. Its hull pulsed with patterns that seemed to move independently, and energy readings suggested it was charging some kind of planet-killer weapon. Signal the ground team, Webb ordered. Tell them they have 5 minutes. After that, we execute Phase 4 whether they're clear or not. On the planet's surface, Rodriguez received the message and felt time compress around him. 5 minutes to extract 12 people from alien biomachinery, fight their way out of a hostile facility, and reach the extraction point. Kim, whatever you're going to do, do it now, he said. Dr. Kim activated an emergency protocol she had hoped never to use, flooding the biomachinery with a cocktail of human pharmaceuticals and bioengineered viruses. The alien systems convulsed as foreign substances invaded their organic networks, causing catastrophic failures that released the human prisoners. Some of them screamed as crude modifications tore free from their bodies. Others collapsed as life support systems failed abruptly. But they were free, and that was what mattered. Extraction point 2 kilometers southeast, Rodriguez announced, lifting one of the unconscious hostages over his shoulder. Move, move, move. They fought their way out of the chamber, through corridors that were now actively trying to kill them. The prison's biocomputer had identified them as the infection to be eliminated, and every surface they touched sprouted defensive spines or secreted acidic compounds. Outside the facility, Vasquez had positioned herself with a clear field of fire toward the extraction point. Her rifle spoke with mechanical precision, dropping Vorthak guards who tried to intercept the fleeing humans. But there were too many of them, and they were learning to adapt to human tactics. Chen, we need a miracle, Rodriguez panted into his communicator. Working on it, Chen replied. His fingers danced across his control pad, uploading a final virus package directly into the prison's core biocomputer. Give me 30 seconds. Rodriguez didn't think they had 30 seconds. Vorthak warriors were closing in from all directions, their bioweapons charging for devastating salvos. The modified hostages were slowing them down, some barely conscious, others racked with pain as alien implants fought their bodies' immune systems. Then the prison complex behind them began to scream. Chen's final virus was not designed to disrupt the biocomputers. It was designed to cause them uncontrollable pain. The organic structure convulsed as every nerve ending fired simultaneously, creating a feedback loop of agony that drove the living building into a frenzy of self-destruction. The Vorthak guards stopped their pursuit, turning back toward their dying facility, as alarm pheromones flooded the air. The prison was tearing itself apart, organic walls splitting open to reveal pulsing internal organs, defense systems turning on each other in a cascade of biological madness. Extraction point in sight, Vasquez reported. Phantom Strike, we need pickup now. The stealth ship materialized above them, its cargo bay already open as it descended through the alien atmosphere. Webb watched the bioship formation approaching the planet's orbital space and made his final calculation. Ground team aboard, Martinez announced. All hostages accounted for. Webb nodded grimly. Signal the lunar charges. Execute Phase 4. High above the planet, explosive devices that had been placed on the unstable moon completed their final countdown. The detonation was relatively small by stellar standards, barely enough to crack a significant portion of the moon's surface, but it was precisely calculated to destabilize the satellite's orbit, sending massive chunks of rock cascading toward the planet below. The Vorthak bioships in orbit had approximately 6 minutes to choose between pursuing the escaping humans or trying to intercept a meteor storm that was about to devastate their prison world. They chose to save their own planet. Webb watched their tactical display as the alien vessels moved to intercept the largest meteors, their bioweapons carving chunks of rock into smaller, more manageable pieces. It was an impossible task. There were simply too many projectiles for even 15 bioships to stop them all. The first impacts began as the Phantom Strike cleared the planet's atmosphere. Through the observation deck, Rodriguez watched mushroom clouds bloom across the alien landscape, marking the places where moon fragments struck the surface. The prison complex that had tortured human civilians simply ceased to exist, vaporized by a chunk of rock the size of a city block. "Message sent," Webb announced grimly. The rescued hostages were in the medical bay, Dr. Kim and the ship's medical team working frantically to stabilize their conditions. Some would recover completely, others would carry the scars of their captivity for the rest of their lives. But they were alive, they were free, and they were going home. 6 hours later, the Phantom Strike dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of human territory, transmitting a tightly encrypted message to Fleet Headquarters. Within minutes, Rodriguez found himself in the communication center, facing the holographic image of Admiral Sarah Chen. "Mission status?" she asked without preamble. 12 hostages recovered, Rodriguez reported. Vorthak prison facility destroyed. Enemy casualties estimated in the thousands. Message delivered, as requested. Admiral Chen nodded slowly. "And the political ramifications?" Rodriguez smiled grimly. "Admiral, I think the galaxy is about to discover that humanity is not the helpless species they thought they were dealing with. The Vorthak won't forget this lesson anytime soon, and neither will anyone else who was watching." Within 48 hours, news of the raid had spread throughout the galactic community. The official Vorthak statement claimed that their facility had been destroyed by terrorist attacks carried out by rogue human elements. But the other species weren't fooled. They had seen the tactical recordings, analyzed the precision of the assault, and drawn their own conclusions. Humanity might be the newest member of the galactic community, but they were not helpless primitives. They were apex predators who had spent millennia perfecting the art of warfare, and they would not tolerate threats against their people. The mockery stopped. Trade negotiations resumed with considerably more respect for human capabilities, and across the galaxy, military planners began updating their threat assessments to reflect a simple but important truth. When pushed too far, humans pushed back. Hard. The lesson had been written in fire across the stars themselves, and the galaxy would remember it for generations to come.